Maybe you first saw the Ford Gran Torino in the Clint Eastwood film of the same name, in Fast and Furious, or maybe your dad owned one. Or perhaps you've just always admired that muscular, all-American muscle car for as long as you can remember. Whatever kickstarted your interest in the Ford Torino line, it's a hard car not to love. The Torino always had a handsome profile, but it's what's under the hood that really makes this a special muscle car. The Ford Torino line had a wide range of engine options, but you're probably here for the Gran Torino Sport 351 with the Cobra Jet engine under the hood, so that's where we'll start. The 1972 Gran Torino Sport's 248 horsepower 51 Cobra Jet V8. The most powerful Gran Torino Sport engine, making it the most powerful engine in the Ford Torino lineup overall, was the 351 cubic inch Cobra Jet V8. The actual base engine for the Sport was the same 302 cubic inch V8 found in the Gran Torino and many of the standard Ford Torinos. But it was the Cobra Jet that made this such an exciting car. If someone tells you that their dream car is a Gran Torino, they don't mean the one with the 98 horsepower i6 under the hood. They're probably talking about this one. Gran Torino Sports were available with either a hardtop or a sports roof soft top, whereas the Gran Torino was only available as a hardtop coupe. If you're eyeing a Gran Torino and you can't tell which one you're looking at, look for the hood scoops and sports mirror. Or you could check for the Gran Torino Sports signature on the front left of the vehicle. We've covered the used Ford Torino market extensively, but if you just want to know what a Gran Torino Sport with a Cobra Jet under the hood will cost you, expect to spend around $21,300 for a model in good condition. A hardtop Gran Torino coupe with the same engine will run you about $14,000. Everything under the hood is essentially the same, but the Sport will get you those 6.9 second 0 to 60 times thanks to lighter curb weight and sportier body. The 1972 Gran Torino's 161 horsepower, 351 CID Cleveland V8. Not to be confused with the 351 cubic inch Cobra Jet 4V, the 1972 Gran Torino was offered with a 351 cubic inch 2V Cleveland V8. The Cleveland V8 wasn't nearly in the same league as the Cobra Jet, but 8.1 seconds off the starting line was nothing to sneeze at back in the early 1970s. The Gran Torino was sporty but aimed more at the family driver, whereas the Sport was marketed directly to the gearheads. Besides the lack of hood scoops and sports mirrors, the 1972 Gran Torino can be identified from the Sport model by its oval-shaped grille. People often use Ford Torino to refer to the Gran Torino, but the standard Torino had a less sporty profile. It was available in a four-door sedan model, and it came with an i6 as the standard engine, whereas all versions of the Gran Torino started you off with a V8. The Cleveland engines were named for what else? Cleveland, Ohio, although the Cleveland engine factory is not actually located in Cleveland. The factory's address is in Brook Park, Ohio, right outside of Cleveland. The Cleveland engines are officially known as the 335 series, but when you're using three-digit numbers to refer to a whole family of engines, it gets real confusing real quick, so we always like our engine nicknames. All the other 1972 Ford Torino engine options. The Torino series was offered with three other engines besides the 350s. At the entry level, the 1972 Ford Torino packed a 4.1-liter inline-six, and the Gran Torino and Gran Torino Sport carried a 302 cubic inch 4.9-liter Windsor V8. The best of the upgrade engines, if you weren't going with Cobra Jet, would have to be the 7.0-liter 385 series V8, delivering 205 horsepower and 322 pound-feet of torque. With a 0 to 60 time of 9.2 seconds, the 429 wasn't going to beat either of the 350s on the quarter-mile track. But if you can't find a 351, the 429 is a solid bronze medal. The 429 sells for a bit cheaper than the faster Gran Torinos, usually going for around $10,900 in good condition, according to Haggerty. The 429 actually produced greater torque and horsepower than the Cleveland 351, but because of the heavier curb weight, that didn't translate into the same clean 0 to 60 times as you got with the smaller 351s. Sometimes called the malaise era, 1972 was a year of compromise for the American muscle car. There have been more powerful V8s than any version of the Ford Torino, but the engine lineup Ford had up for offer in the early 1970s did a better job of meeting the American government in the middle than much of the competition. These engines were able to capture the spirit of the muscle car while staying true to the tightening emissions laws of the era. The Cleveland and 385 series engines were actually developed as replacements for the FE family that had given birth to the Cobra jets. So the 1972 Gran Torino firmly sits on the line between two very different eras in American automotive history. The final FE engine placed in a production car would be in 1976, and by the early 1980s, the entire FE factory would be retooled to make 1.6-liter inline-4 engines for the first-generation Ford Escort. America would fall in love with high-horsepower V6s and V8s again by the end of the 1980s, but many of the American-made cars from the late 1970s and early 1980s spoke of an era of belt tightening, leaving the rubber-burning Cobra jets a thing of a bygone past. The automakers that would survive this era would be the ones that could adapt to a very different landscape than any the American auto industry had ever seen before. The 1972 Ford Torino was a sign of its times. Like many of the most interesting vehicles throughout automotive history, the 1972 Ford Torino line, from the entry-level 240 CID Torino to the blistering 351 Cobra Jet Sport, speaks of its era. Ford was leaning the brand toward family cars with models like the Torino Squire offering moms and dads a station wagon with a muscle car heart. But you could still scream across the blacktop in under 7 seconds in a sports roof coupe if you wanted to. Given how light the next era of American coupes would be in terms of raw horsepower, it's no wonder you'll find so many of these in such excellent shape. If you had a 248 horsepower Gran Torino in an era when Ford was producing glorified golf carts like the Escort hatchback, you were likely to hold on to that thing for dear life. As with many beloved collector's cars, prices are gradually appreciating at a rate of around 7% year after year. So don't wait too long if you've always wanted one of these of your own. Well, there you have it, the monstrous beast that everyone snubbed at for years. Have you ever owned one of these baddies? Comment down below and let's discuss. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button to keep you updated on our future uploads. Until then, I'll catch you on the next one.